Her name was Dorothy Scarrett. She was the last one. The last to work with him. The last to see him alive in room 3327 of the Hotel New Yorker. The last to know what he was truly thinking in those quiet, lonely, static-laced New York nights. For decades, she held her silence. And what she had seen locked away while the world built a myth around her boss. Myths of a mad genius, a master of lightning, a man who spoke with pigeons. She watched as his name became a sideshow attraction. Until, in the 1990s, on the threshold of her own death, a 90-year-old Dorothy Scarrett chose to break a vow. A vow made not to Tesla, but to herself. A vow of silence, born of fear and of reverence. The journalist at her bedside in a small apartment expected sentimental stories. Of his eccentricities, of feeding birds from a windowsill, of the flashes of light inside an aging genius's mind. Instead, her parched lips uttered the words that would change everything. "They are lying," she whispered. "They lie about what they found. They told the world his work was speculative, impractical, philosophical. They lied." The journalist leaned closer. "Who are they?" "The FBI." The old woman nodded. "They took everything. Right after he died. 2 trucks. They broke open his safe. They were searching for the death ray. They never found it. But they found something else. Something that frightened them far more than any weapon." She paused, her eyes looking through the journalist, into the past. "He recorded it. He heard it. In Colorado. Back in 1899. The journalist frowned. "You mean the signals? From Mars? Everyone knows that story. He was mistaken." A faint, bitter smile touched Dorothy's face. "Everyone thought he was mad. He thought so himself for a time. He thought it was Mars. He was wrong about that. But he was right that it wasn't from Earth. He was right about the most important thing." And on that night, January 8th, 1943, when they were looking for proof that his system worked, that he had opened a door they never knew existed. And they buried it. Buried it for 50 years. This investigation begins with that deathbed confession, with a key that unlocks the most guarded and strangest archive of the 20th century. We all know the myths, but what if the truth is infinitely more staggering? What truly happened in that laboratory in Colorado Springs? What did he hear? And why, at the height of the Second World War, did the United States government expend every resource to seize the papers of a dead, destitute immigrant? File number 017512. A classified FBI dossier on Nikola Tesla. To understand what the Bureau feared, one must first understand the man. He was not merely an inventor. He was an aberration. A mind that seemed to have arrived from the future, or perhaps from another reality entirely. His story begins at the stroke of midnight, between the 9th and 10th of July, 1856. In the small Serbian village of Smiljan, a place that would one day be part of modern Croatia. Family lore holds that he was born during the most violent thunderstorm of the century. The midwife, terrified, declared to his mother, "This will be a child of the storm." But Nikola Tesla replied, "No, he will be a child of light." It was a phrase that would become prophecy. His mother, Nikola, was illiterate, yet a brilliant inventor of household devices who could recite thousands of lines of Serbian epic poetry from memory. His father, Milutin, was an Orthodox priest, a man of rigid principles and a vast library, But the boy had visions. This is not a metaphor. From his earliest years, Tesla was afflicted by a peculiar condition. He saw brilliant, blinding flashes of light that would completely obscure the world around him. And in the wake of these flashes, he said, came images. He did not simply think of his inventions, he saw them. Rendered in his imagination in 3 dimensions with precise measurements and textures. He could assemble a turbine within his mind, switch it on, and let it run for weeks. Then he would mentally disassemble it to inspect which parts had worn down. He needed no blueprints. He required no models. His mind was the world's first virtual reality simulator. The pivotal trauma that shaped him occurred in childhood. The death of his older brother, Dane. Dane was the prodigy, the family's great hope. He was killed in an accident involving a horse. His parents were shattered by grief. For the rest of his life, Nikola felt he had to prove himself, to prove that he was worthy, that he was not inferior to his lost brother. This deep-seated complex, this desperate desire to show the world his value, became his primary fuel. He fled from home, studying at the Technical University in Graz, then in Prague. He was consumed. He worked 20 hours a day, sleeping for only 2 or 3. He drove himself to the point of a complete nervous collapse. He dropped out of his studies. He became a gambler, addicted, losing all his money as he drifted across Europe. Then, in 1881, he rebooted. He moved to Budapest and took a job with a telegraph company. It was there, while walking through a park with a friend reciting Goethe's Faust, that he saw it. That same familiar flash of light. And behind it, the solution. The answer to a problem that had confounded the greatest minds on the planet. The rotating magnetic field. The fundamental principle of the alternating current motor. He grabbed a stick and drew the diagram right there in the sand of the park. An idea, born in the flash of light within the theater of the mind, now etched into the physical world. It was a pattern he would repeat for the rest of his life, pulling the future, piece by piece, from the unseen into the real. A process that would illuminate the world and eventually draw the fearful attention of the powers that governed it. It was a moment that would redraw the map of the world. The year is 1882. The city, Paris. A young engineer is at work for the Continental Edison Company, tasked with repairing their inefficient direct current generators. He sees a better way. He tries to tell his superiors about a revolutionary new system, about alternating current. They laugh at him. It is then he decides. He must meet the Pope of Invention himself. In 1884, he boards a ship bound for New York. The voyage is a nightmare. A mutiny breaks out. He is robbed of everything he has. He arrives in the New World with 4 cents in his pocket, a handful of poems, and a letter of recommendation to the only man he considers his equal, Thomas Alva Edison. The letter, from his boss in Paris, is simple and profound. My dear Edison, I know 2 great men. One is you. The other is the young man who stands before you. Edison, the celebrated wizard of Menlo Park, was Tesla's idol. But he was also his complete, absolute opposite. Edison was the pragmatist, a rough-hewn experimenter, a businessman above all. His method was famous: 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. He tested thousands of filaments until one finally worked. He was building a world on direct current, DC. It was simple, it was understandable, but it was monstrously inefficient. Direct current could not travel. It bled power with every foot of wire. For every mile, a new, expensive power station had to be built. It was a world of short leashes, a world where Edison and his backers would control every city block. Into this world stepped Tesla. Tall, elegant, an aristocrat with a vision. He did not bring an improvement. He brought magic. He brought alternating current, AC, a system that, with a device of genius simplicity called a transformer, could raise voltage to hundreds of thousands of volts, sending power across thin wires for hundreds of miles, and then step it down again to a safe level inside any home. It was freedom. It was the network. And Edison understood immediately that this immigrant was a mortal threat to his empire. First, he tried to absorb him. He offered Tesla $50,000, the equivalent of over $1.5 million today, if he could perfect Edison's own failing DC generators. Tesla, a man possessed by his work, accomplished the feat in a matter of weeks, redesigning the entire system from the ground up. When he went to collect his payment, legend says Edison laughed in his face. "Young man," he scoffed, "you do not yet understand our American humor." Tesla walked out that same day. For an entire year, the genius who invented the 20th century dug ditches for $2 a day, shoveling earth just to keep from starving. But a vision that powerful cannot be buried. He was found by George Westinghouse, an industrialist, an inventor, and a fierce rival to Edison. Unlike Edison, Westinghouse was a trained engineer. He understood the mathematics. He saw the future in Tesla's equations. He bought the patents. He gave him a laboratory. And the war of the currents began. This was no mere battle of patents. It was a dirty, bloody war of public perception. Edison, seeing he was losing the technological fight, made a dark turn. He decided that if he could not out-engineer his rival, he would terrify the world instead. A new kind of battle was about to be waged, not for market share, but for the very soul of the modern age. A campaign of discredit was launched. To win, Thomas Edison had to prove that Nikola Tesla's alternating current was not merely an alternative. It was death itself. Edison's agents, led by an engineer named Harold Brown, began a series of gruesome public demonstrations. Before the eyes of horrified reporters, they executed stray dogs, cats, horses, and even calves with alternating current. The goal was to make the words alternating current and death synonymous in the public mind. But even this was not enough. Edison secretly financed Harold Brown's lobbying efforts in the state of New York for a new, supposedly humane method of execution. It was called the electric chair, and by design, it would run exclusively on Westinghouse's alternating current. The idea was to see a single phrase printed in every newspaper across the nation: "Killed by a Westinghouse current." In 1890, the chair claimed its first client. The execution of William Kemmler was a grotesque spectacle. The condemned man had to be jolted twice until smoke was seen rising from his spine. Had Edison finally won? The answer would come not in a laboratory, but on a stage. Tesla's rebuttal was a piece of pure, arrogant, brilliant theater. The year was 1893, the Chicago World's Fair. It was to be the battle for light. Edison and his investor, J.P. Morgan, intended to illuminate the fair with their direct current lamps. But Westinghouse and Tesla won the contract, bidding at half the cost. It was a triumph. On opening night, President Grover Cleveland pressed a button, and 100,000 lamps, powered by Tesla's alternating current, bathed the white city in a sea of light. To the world, it was a miracle. But Tesla went further. In his own pavilion, he staged a show that would make him a superstar. He stood on stage, holding a glass tube, unconnected to any wire, and it glowed in his hand. He was passing 250,000 volts of high-frequency alternating current through his own body. His form was shrouded in a glowing, humming corona of lightning, while lamps in his hands burned brightly. He had proven two things: that AC, if its physics were properly understood, was perfectly safe, and that he was, for all intents and purposes, a magician. He had won the war. He lit America. He built a bridge to the 20th century. But his mind was already elsewhere. It was in Colorado. In 1899, Tesla moved. He fled New York. He needed space, he needed silence, he needed altitude. He built his laboratory in Colorado Springs, on a plateau 2,000 meters above sea level. The air here was dry and rarefied, a perfect dielectric. And it was here, at the foot of Pikes Peak, that the most violent thunderstorms in America raged. He had not come merely to study lightning. He had come to surpass it. Creating an improved radio system for receiving stock market reports, Tesla was building something that still defies comprehension. In the center of the desolate plateau, he erected a wooden tower, 200 feet high, and at its peak, he placed a giant copper sphere. It was not a transmitter for the world that was. It was an antenna, reaching for a world that was yet to be. Beneath it all, clawing into the dry earth, lay a grounding system of staggering complexity. And at the center of the structure, his masterpiece, the largest and most powerful Tesla coil ever conceived, the magnifying transmitter. This was no mere transformer. It was a musical instrument, engineered to be in tune with the resonant frequency of the planet itself. What was he doing? At night, when the valley slept, Nikola Tesla would lock the heavy oak doors, don his boots with their 8-inch thick rubber soles, and throw the master switch. What happened next, the residents of Colorado Springs could only describe as an apocalypse. The wrath of God. First, a ghostly blue corona would begin to bleed from the copper sphere atop the tower. St. Elmo's fire. Then came a low, rising hum that vibrated in the very bone. And then, a profound silence. In that silence, a bolt of lightning would erupt from the sphere. 100-foot, 200-foot bolts of artificial, man-made lightning tearing at the sky. 12 million, by some calculations as much as 100 million, volts. Discharges of such power that the thunder was heard 15 miles away in the next town. The ground itself hummed. Metal objects within a mile radius sparked with current. Horses in distant pastures, shod in iron, would collapse in terror, their bodies convulsing from shocks traveling through the earth. Butterflies, drifting too close to the tower, were consumed in an instant, haloed in blue fire. And Tesla himself sat inside. At the heart of this maelstrom, deafened by the roar, he coolly made entries in his laboratory journal. One evening, during a particularly violent experiment, he overloaded the system. He siphoned every last watt from the city's power station, plunging the entirety of Colorado Springs into darkness. Yet his tower continued to rage and glow, a lone, thundering beacon in a world he had just extinguished, feeding on the colossal energy he had stored within it.
What in God's name was he doing?
He was not merely creating lightning. He was pumping energy into the planet. He used the Earth as a colossal resonator, sending pulses of such monstrous power into the crust that they would reflect from the planet's core and the ionosphere, returning to their source to create a standing wave of pure energy. He had proven it. The Ia. His experiments were an unimaginable success. He could illuminate lamps simply stuck in the ground, miles from his tower. No wires. He had demonstrated that the wireless transmission of energy was not a dream. It was a reality. But in the process, he stumbled upon something else. He had not only built a transmitter, he had, unwittingly, created a receiver. It was the most sensitive radio device on the planet. So sensitive, it could register the atmospheric disturbances from thunderstorms on the far side of the world, in Indonesia. Tesla was the first to record these atmospherics, the radio signals born from lightning. He learned to track them. July 1899. Tesla sits in his laboratory. It is night. He had set out to make the Earth speak his language. But in the silence between the thunder he created, he began to hear it speak its own. And in doing so, he became the first man to truly listen to the whispers of the cosmos, forever uncertain if he was the only one. The apparatus is active. Silence. A deep, resonant quiet, as a lone figure listens to the pulse of the planet. And then, cutting through the familiar static of the cosmos, he hears it. A pulse. A beat. A signal. This was not the chaotic crackle of a distant storm, a sound he knew intimately. This was different. It was rhythmic. It was artificial. It was intelligent. In his private journal, he would later write, "I can never forget the feelings I experienced when I realized I had been the witness to something which in all probability will have incalculable consequences for mankind." Nikola Tesla was, to the marrow of his bones, a scientist. The process of elimination began at once. It was not terrestrial interference. He knew its telltale signatures. It was not the sun. He cross-referenced the solar activity. It was not lightning. He was tracking the storms across the entire globe. This was something else. Something from above. From space. His mind raced, sifting through the possibilities. He was a man of his time, and in the year 1899, the world was in the grip of a planetary fever, and its name was Mars. Only years earlier, the Italian astronomer Giovanni Schiaparelli had published his observations of canali on the Martian surface. In Italian, the word meant natural channels, but in English it was translated as canals, artificial structures. The American aristocrat Percival Lowell had just built an entire observatory for the sole purpose of mapping them, releasing a book that argued for the existence of an ancient, dying civilization, desperately building irrigation systems across a desert world. Herbert George Wells had just published The War of the Worlds. The idea of an intelligent race on the red planet was not fantasy. It was a serious scientific hypothesis. And so Tesla, having discarded every other explanation, arrived at what seemed to be the only logical conclusion. It was Mars, and they were answering. He immediately announced his findings to the press. The world did not celebrate. It scoffed. The very papers that had once hailed him as a modern Prometheus now ran headlines that dripped with ridicule. Tesla talks to Mars. The genius has gone mad. His reputation, already scarred by his war with Edison, was shattered. The scientific community turned its back. Investors vanished. His chief financial sponsor, J.P. Morgan, the most powerful banker in the world, realized Tesla was not merely building a system for radio. He was building something else entirely. Something Morgan could not control. He was building a world of free energy. Legend holds that when Tesla, in a fit of excitement, rushed to Morgan and declared, "I can power the entire world without wires," Morgan asked a single, simple question.
And where, damn it, do I attach the meter?
Tesla, the idealist, had not thought of meters. He had thought of humanity. Morgan immediately cut off all funding. Tesla's dream project, the colossal Wardenclyffe Tower on Long Island, designed to provide free, wireless energy and communication to the globe, was never completed. The final blow came when Guglielmo Marconi, using 17 of Tesla's own patents, successfully sent the first transatlantic radio signal in 1901. Morgan had what he wanted, a radio he could monetize, not a utopia he could not. Tesla was left in a fury of betrayal. His great tower, the testament to his vision, stood for years as a skeleton against the sky, a monument not to failure, but to a dream too vast for the world it was meant to serve. It is the eternal conflict, not between men, but between the world as it is and the world as it could be. Marconi is a good fellow, he would say. Let him continue. He is using 17 of my patents. But it was too late. By 1917, his magnificent Wardenclyffe Tower, a dream of wireless power for the world, was dynamited into scrap. The official reasons given were to pay his mounting debts and to prevent German spies from using it as a landmark during the Great War. With the fall of his tower came the fall of the man. Nikola Tesla became a recluse. He would spend the last 40 years of his life in a room at the Hotel New Yorker, a ghost haunting the city he had once planned to illuminate. Ruined, forgotten by nearly everyone. Yet his mind never stopped working. In the theater of his imagination, he designed ever stranger, almost mystical devices. A death ray he called Teleforce, oscillators that could supposedly trigger earthquakes. And of course, he spoke to the pigeons. He died on January 7th, 1943. He was 86 years old, in debt, alone. The story seemed to be over. But a single cryptic remark from his assistant reopens the entire mystery. She recalled a strange event from decades earlier. "He thought it was Mars," she said. "He was wrong. But he was right that it was not of this earth." We must go back to the thin mountain air of 1899. What anomaly did Tesla truly encounter? The signal was there, rhythmic, persistent. Beep, beep, beep. To understand what it might have been, we must leave Colorado and travel forward in time. The year is 1967. The place, Cambridge University, England. A graduate student named Jocelyn Bell Burnell is performing the tedious work of analyzing data from a new radio telescope, sifting through hundreds of meters of paper printouts. Then, one night, she notices it. An anomaly, a strange scruff on the tape, appearing from the exact same point in the sky. She focuses the instrument. and she hears it.
Beep, beep, beep.
A signal, repeating with a perfect, unnerving, non-human regularity. Once every 1.33 seconds. It was so precise, so seemingly artificial, that she and her supervisor, Anthony Hewish, jokingly labeled the source LGM-1, Little Green Men 1. They were, for a time, entirely serious about the possibility. But the truth was not extraterrestrial. It was something that would rewrite astronomy. It was a pulsar, the collapsed, dying heart of a massive star. A super-dense neutron core, no larger than a city, yet with more mass than our sun, spinning at an incredible speed and sweeping a beam of radio waves through the void. A cosmic lighthouse. For this discovery, Hewish received the Nobel Prize. Jocelyn Bell, who actually discovered it, did not. And now, we return to 1899, to Tesla, to his tower. What if his magnifying transmitter, his giant coil, was not just a transmitter? What if, without knowing it, he had accidentally built the world's first radio telescope? A machine so sensitive that it was able to hear not the faint possibility of life on Mars, but the colossal shout of a pulsar across deep space. What if Tesla, a man 68 years ahead of his era, had recorded a signal from the cosmos, making one of the greatest astronomical discoveries in history, and died without ever knowing it? Sometimes the universe speaks, but only a mind truly out of step with its own time can be the first to hear its voice. In the heart of a world at war, he had mistaken the rhythmic pulses of the cosmos for an alien intelligence, an error in judgment. But if it was merely a mistake, why did the Federal Bureau of Investigation need his papers? Here, the mystery deepens into a thriller. January 7th, 1943. Nikola Tesla dies. The following morning, January 8th, a hotel maid discovers his body. And on that very same day, the United States government intervened. Tesla's nephew, Sava Kosanovic, a Yugoslav diplomat living in New York, rushes to the Hotel New Yorker. He finds room 3327 has been breached. Tesla's safe stands open, its contents gone. Agents from the Office of Alien Property are already there, a shadowy wartime organization with the power to seize the assets of foreign enemies. Tesla was a naturalized American citizen, but his homeland, Yugoslavia, was now occupied territory. It was pretext enough. They sealed the room. They seized everything. 2 truckloads of a life's work. Over 80 trunks filled with his diaries, his notes, his models. The question hangs heavy in the air. Why would the United States government, in the throes of the Second World War, in the midst of the Manhattan Project, require the papers of an 86-year-old visionary who spoke to pigeons? The official version pointed to one thing: the death ray. Tesla had claimed to have invented Teleforce, a particle beam weapon capable of annihilating 10,000 enemy aircraft from a distance of 400 kilometers. He had offered it to the United States, to Great Britain, to Yugoslavia, and perhaps even to the Soviet Union. The FBI was consumed by the fear that his blueprints could fall into the hands of the enemy. But what if they were searching for something else entirely? To decipher the inventor's sprawling, chaotic genius, the FBI needed an expert. Someone who could navigate the labyrinth of high-voltage physics. They turned to a professor from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, a brilliant engineer, a leading authority on X-rays, radar, and the very forces Tesla had sought to command. His name was John G. Trump. He was the uncle of the future 45th President of the United States. This is not speculation. It is a documented historical fact. To John Trump, the genius from MIT, fell the task of unlocking Tesla's black box. He spent 3 days immersed in the papers. Then he wrote his report. That report, classified for decades, was meant to be the final word. In it, Professor Trump concluded that Tesla's work was worthless. His thoughts and efforts during at least the past 15 years, he wrote, were primarily of a speculative, philosophical, and somewhat promotional character. He found no new, sound, workable principles or methods. The case was closed. An agent scrawled across the top of the file, "Nothing of value." The 80 trunks were sent to languish in a government warehouse. But the official story never felt complete. The dismissal was too clean, too absolute. For how could one genius of high-voltage energy look upon the life's work of another and see nothing? Perhaps the truth was not that the papers were useless, but that their potential was too vast, their implications too dangerous for a world already on fire. The secret that was taken from room 3327 was not buried because it was worthless, but because it was priceless. He was one of the few on the planet who could truly comprehend what Nikola Tesla was saying. He could not fail to see it. But what was it? They were not searching for a death ray. They were not hunting for signals from Mars. They were after the true secret. The secret of the magnifying transmitter, the secret of the tower, Wardenclyffe. On Long Island, the Wardenclyffe Tower was never just a spire for radio. It was a project destined to remake the world. Tesla had no intention of merely using the radio waves Marconi was sending through the atmosphere. He intended to use the Earth itself. He had proven it in Colorado. The globe and its ionosphere behave as a colossal spherical capacitor. He could pump it full of energy. His plan was not to send a message, but to create a standing global field of power. Any individual, at any point on the planet, could drive a simple rod with a tuned resonator into the ground and draw electricity. Limitless, wireless, free for all humanity. This was the vision that terrified J.P. Morgan. For how does one place a meter on energy that is simply everywhere? This was more than a business venture. It was utopia. It was the death knell for the entire coal industry, for oil, for copper. It was the end of the whole economic model of the 20th century. The strange rhythmic signals Tesla had detected, they were not a new discovery. They were proof. Proof that his apparatus worked, that it was so exquisitely sensitive it could hear the quiet whisper of dying stars from the other side of the galaxy. And the government, John Trump, the FBI, they understood. They realized that if this device could receive a signal from the cosmos, it could transmit power across the planet. This is what they were looking for. This is what they found. And this is what they buried. After a years-long legal battle waged by Tesla's nephew, 80 trunks of his papers were returned to Yugoslavia in 1952. Today, they form the heart of the Nikola Tesla Museum in Belgrade. But was it everything? Or was it only the speculative philosophical writings that John Trump had deemed safe for public view? Where are the actual blueprints? Where are the calculations for the magnifying transmitter? The FBI microfilmed every page before the trunks were shipped. To this day, those microfilms remain classified, sealed under the aegis of national security. We are left living in a world that could have been utterly different. A world without wires, without utility bills, without wars fought for oil. A world, perhaps, that was sealed away in 1943, inside room number 3327. We can only look at his patents, look at the world we have built, and ask the one lingering question: what if he was right?
The next chapter of this story is yet to be written, and its most startling revelations may still lie hidden, waiting for the relentless march of time to bring them into the light.